Happy New Year. I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. More than 50 people have died following a devastating earthquake which rocked the western part of Japan on Monday. Close to 200 Christians were killed following an attack in Nigeria. Greg Musselman from Voice of the Martyrs has an update for us. And the family of the missing Lethbridge man, Marshall Iwasa, is devastated to learn that his burnt-out truck in British Columbia has been taken to a landfill.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A passenger plane burst into flames on Tuesday at an airport in Tokyo, with reports saying another aircraft hit it after landing. Emergency officials say 5 people were killed aboard the Japanese Coast Guard aircraft when it collided with a much larger jumbo jet. Fortunately, all 379 occupants of Japan Airlines Flight 516 were able to get out safely before the plane was completely engulfed in flames. The pilot of the Coast Guard plane escaped with injuries, but his crew members were not as fortunate. Reports say at least 17 people evacuated from the passenger jet plane were injured. An investigation into the collision is ongoing, but investigators say there were no reports of engine or other problems on the Coast Guard aircraft before it landed and collided with the other aircraft. Japan was also rocked by a powerful 7.5 magnitude earthquake, which hit the western part of the country on Monday, leaving at least 55 people dead. Emergency officials say thousands of buildings were also damaged, along with many vehicles and boats. The quake triggered multiple aftershocks. Officials are warning of more quakes and aftershocks as the death toll continues to climb. People are gathered in auditoriums, schools, and community centers as major sections of highways are closed. Tens of thousands of homes have also been destroyed. Water, power, and cell phone service are still down in many areas. There are reports that around 200 Christians were massacred at various villages in Nigeria. Amnesty International says on Friday that 194 people were slaughtered on Christmas Eve in Nigeria's Plateau State. The agency is calling on the country's president to do more than merely condemn the horrific attacks. No one has claimed responsibility for the attacks, but local aid officials believe it is the work, once again, of the Fulani herdsmen, which is an Islamic extremist group. Now, to chat about this in more detail is Greg Musselman, who is with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. And he joins us now from St. Albert, just outside of Edmonton. Greg, you visited the villages recently where so many people were killed.
We were within about a 40 to 45-minute drive, Hal, in Plateau State. In fact, I was in communications with some of our partners that we work with called Christian Faith Ministries. And I was there recently, and I've been in Plateau State a number of times. And for years, that was an area that there was not a lot of persecution. It was more into the northern states, but things have started to change. And, have these Fulani herdsmen that are coming in and doing these horrible things. And one of the things that we were praying for, and I was encouraging people to pray for, is that, Christmas and Easter is often Christians are attacked. And that certainly has been the case in Nigeria. And the last I'd heard, they're still recovering bodies, a lot of damages. Pastors have been killed, homes have been destroyed, churches have been burned down. It's an absolutely devastating situation. About 80 communities in Plateau State were, raised by these militant Islamists. By the way, Fulani herdsmen, wonderful people overall, but you got a militant element of that. They go in and they attack these villages. A lot of it has to do with, part of it is Islam, and they want to Islamize it. But also they want to have access to the fields. And so if the Christians stand up and say, no, you can't do that, these fields belong to us, then they attack them. So you've got, not only the Islamic part in trying to Islamize the Christians, but also taking their land as well. And the result is horrible. And so they picked, between December 23rd and Christmas Day, and they had these attacks all over Plateau State. The area still remains on high alert, and it is absolutely devastating. And about 20,000 Nigerians have also left their homes as well. It's horrible, it's sad, and unfortunately this continues to go on.
A report last April says at least 52,250 Nigerian Christians have been killed, mostly by the extremists within the Fulani tribe. Greg, why isn't more being done to protect Christians in these villages?
Well, I have asked that question many times to our partners in Nigeria. In fact, I was in Kaduna State, where there's a lot of persecution, especially in the southern part of that state, and talking with John Joseph Hayab. He is the chairman for the Kaduna State Christian Ministers Association. And I'd asked him as well, and many others said, why doesn't the Nigerian government do more about this? Why is the military not there, especially when they have advance warning that these attacks may be taking place? And the answer is, oh, we don't know. And it is frustrating. Don't they care? Don't they want to do something? Is it apathy? I mean, there's just many reasons. It's in the north, especially, it's in mostly Islamic, Muslim part of the world there. And so there's a lot of, situations right now that are happening where the government, again, the military, they just don't seem to want to do anything. And it's very, very frustrating. And it's costing many people their lives.
Thanks so much for your time today, Greg. That was Greg Musselman, Canadian spokesperson with Voice of the Martyrs, joining us from St. Albert, Alberta. Officials with the terrorist group Hamas have confirmed that one of its founders has died in an explosion in Beirut, Lebanon. Reports by the Lebanese state-run national news agency says the blast was the work of an Israeli drone. Israeli officials are not commenting, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened to kill Salah al-Aruri in the past, even before the attacks by Hamas on October the 7th. This could mark a major escalation in the Middle East war. Hezbollah leader Sayed Nasrallah has vowed to retaliate against any Israeli targeting of Palestinian officials in Lebanon. The former governor of Arkansas and Baptist pastor Mike Huckabee recently met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and witnessed the aftermath of the October 7th attacks by Hamas in southern Israel. On TBN's Centerpoint program, he said there are no words to describe the evil acts that Hamas committed.
But when you go to places like we did in Kafr Aza, which is just about 400 meters from Gaza, one of the first places the terrorists hit, and you go into the homes in the kibbutz where these people were slaughtered, they weren't just murdered, they were slaughtered. Their bodies were mutilated. The level of atrocity that was inflicted upon these people is that of the most uncivilized behavior that I've ever heard of in my life. Some things I can't even say on television. It would just be inappropriate to describe in detail. But here's what I can describe. When the terrorists came in and they murdered these people, they often would murder children in front of their parents, or parents in front of their children. They would mutilate their bodies. They would seek to humiliate them by stripping them and doing just unspeakable things to them. It wasn't just a slaughter of them. It was an extraordinary level of violence.
A large protest near a Jewish neighborhood in Toronto shut down access to the very busy Avenue Road. Protesters are demanding that the Jews go back to Europe.
Tax money is going to kill kids. Your tax money is funding genocide.
Don't talk to him. He's a Zionist.
I'm just telling him what he's paying for.
Don't talk to him. He's a Zionist. Don't talk to him.
He has to go back to Europe and give us our land. And that's
I know. I'm just telling him what he's paying for while he's here.
Ask them to go back to Europe.
Yeah. Go back to Poland. Go back to Russia. Go back to Ukraine. Czechoslovakia, whatever it is.
Our land alone.
Free Palestine.
Well, around these parts, we enjoyed another sunny day here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is back for the first time in 2024. Happy New Year, Jeanette. Now, for those who enjoy not having to shovel snow, these are certainly happy times, but our farmers could certainly use the moisture.
Well, Happy New Year to you as well, Hal, and to you, our viewer. And yes, still experiencing those dry conditions here in southern Alberta. Was a brown Christmas, and I'm still seeing some green grass in some people's yards here in Lethbridge, which is hard to believe. Okay, we were looking at a high of 3 degrees today, overnight low of -8 into tomorrow on Wednesday. Looking at mainly cloudy in the morning. That sun is going to peak out around noon, high of -1 tomorrow with a wind chill. Could see -13 with that wind chill factor in the morning. Wind at 15 kilometers per hour though. Now, how will the rest of the week look? Well, we're going to see some pluses, we're going to see some minuses, and I'll be back later in the show to let you know all about it. Hal?
Thanks so much, Jeanette. If you live in Alberta, you may have noticed that gas and diesel jumped 9 cents a litre. That's because a good portion of the provincial fuel tax has returned. Government officials say the remaining 4 cents per litre may come back at the end of March if West Texas Intermediate oil remains below $80 US per barrel. It's around $70 right now. Now, to chat about this increase in fuel costs in more detail is the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Chris Sims, who joins us right here from Lethbridge. Chris, how much more is this costing Albertans each time they visit a gas station?
That's a great question. So a year ago, Premier Danielle Smith did the right thing when she fully suspended the fuel tax. So technically, we have a provincial fuel tax of 13 cents per liter of gasoline and diesel. She fully suspended it 1 year ago. Unfortunately now, 9 cents per liter is back on that. So roughly speaking, it'll cost you around $7 or so more per minivan per fill up now. For a pickup truck, it's going to cost you around $10 extra every time you're filling up your pickup truck. And again, $10 can go a long way. You can get a roast chicken for $10. What's really concerning here is that the fuel tax also hits diesel. And so, of course, truckers deliver everything we eat and use. So you increase the tax on diesel, you're going to increase the cost of pretty much everything in Alberta.
Didn't our finance minister recently say that Alberta has a $5 billion surplus? I mean, the timing of this increase is tough since so many Albertans still have to pay off their credit card debt after Christmas.
Yeah, this is what's the big head scratcher. So politically and personally speaking, a year ago, the premier said she was fully suspending the fuel tax because she wanted to shield Albertans from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's carbon tax hikes and from the problems caused by inflation, again, largely a federal government issue, because people were struggling to afford basics here in Alberta. Those two factors have not changed. People are still really struggling to afford things like groceries and fuel and housing in Alberta. And Prime Minister Trudeau is ready to jack up his carbon tax again in just a few weeks' time. And mathematically speaking, this doesn't make sense either because Alberta has a $5.5 billion surplus right now. They could afford to extend the fuel tax holiday by another 6 months and pay down some of the debt, and they would still have a surplus. So we don't know why they're doing this.
Thanks so much, Chris. That was the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Chris Sims, joining us here in Lethbridge. The family of a missing Alberta man was disheartened to learn that the truck he went missing in has been moved to a landfill. Marshall Iwasa disappeared in November of 2019 from Lethbridge, but his truck was located a week later in the backcountry of British Columbia near Pemberton. As BCN's Jeanette Rocher reports now, Iwasa's family says they're simply crushed because his truck was the only thing they had left of Marshall when they felt the vehicle could offer clues into his disappearance.
That is very much a blow. That was it was a blow.
Those are the words of a grieving mother over the news of the removal of her missing son's burnt-out truck. The truck, which brought so much media attention to the Marshall Iwasa case, no longer sits on the Brian Waddington trailhead. It was removed by a private citizen belonging to the Varsity Outdoor Club, a group of nature enthusiasts who maintain hiking trails in BC. Jeff Mottershead says he single-handedly cut the truck into pieces, then hauled it off to a landfill. He writes about it on the Varsity Outdoor Club blog.
It was clearly something that shouldn't be there.
Mottershead says he took it upon himself to remove the vehicle when it became clear it was becoming an environmental hazard and a trash dump.
It was leaking oil, it was leaking transmission fluid, the battery had burned down, and there was lead all over the place. Having a burnt out truck with debris all over the place and a bunch of stuff thrown in the back already is just a invitation for people to leave garbage. Lots of people who were not aware, they were, doing like gangster poses and stuff by the truck, and they end up on Facebook. It's like, it's not the kind of thing that you want to see if you're the family.
And speaking of the family, Iwasa's mother says they were crushed when they found out after the fact because they viewed the truck almost like Marshall's final resting place, even though it's uncertain whether or not he was ever at that particular spot.
It was shocking. It, again, feels like, okay, another thing of Marshall's has been destroyed. Like we have nothing left of Marshall.
Tammy Johnson says the truck should have been treated like a crime scene and could have offered some evidence.
Once the police lines are gone, then there's no evidentiary value anymore because there's, like, what does any DNA evidence or anything mean? Like, A, after it's already burned out, and B, after a whole ton of people have left their own trash in the back of the truck because they feel it's a garbage can.
Johnson also says no one ever approached them to ask how they would feel about the truck's removal.
It would have given us an opportunity as a family to discuss it and to say, what is best to do here. And chances are we would have understood.
Johnson says had they known, the family might have made one last trek up there to say goodbye to the truck, and her family was hoping to someday put up a memorial at the site.
Did it ever occur to anybody from your group?
I asked Mottershead if it ever occurred to him to reach out to the family before removing the truck.
I guess obviously, based on what you said, I should have consulted with them. Like I feel I blew that, and I'm sorry about that. If they want me to personally put up a memorial, I will do it.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Rocher.
The Marshall Iwasa case is still in the hands of the Lethbridge Police Service. Now, BCN reached out to the LPS about the truck's removal, and in an email they told us that the missing person investigation in relation to Marshall Iwasa remains open. LPS is aware that the truck has been removed. The site where it was found was processed by police quite some time ago, and the scene was subsequently released. Sadly, Canada will not be coming home from the World Junior Hockey Championships in Sweden with a medal. Czechia scored with 11 seconds remaining in the third period to beat Canada 3-2 and knock the Canadians out of the tournament. The quarterfinal game was a rematch of last year's gold medal game in Halifax, which Canada took 3-2 in overtime. It was the second gold medal in a row for Team Canada. Now, sadly, not this year. Well, we had some sunshine mixed with clouds today, just above the freezing mark across much of southwestern Alberta, and that trend should continue for most of the week. A complete look at the weather picture is on deck. Well, we're starting the new year with no snow here in Lethbridge. It has been very dry in this winter so far. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Happy New Year, Jeanette. Any moisture on the horizon, however, for our farmers?
Well, Happy New Year once again, and I guess the short answer to that is no. We will not see any moisture until at least Sunday, but before we get to that, we're still seeing those dry conditions, mainly cloudy on Wednesday, -1 for a high, up to 2 degrees on Thursday. There's that 0 on Friday, and then up to 3 on Saturday. So like I was saying earlier in the show, we're going to be seeing some minuses, some pluses, and there's that big time minus coming at us on Sunday, -11 for a high. We're also looking at 60% chance of flurries, and then on Monday back to -5 for a high to round out that 7-day forecast. So average high for this time of year, -2, -14 is the average low. 11, that was our record high. That happened back in 2002 on this day. And on this day back in 1950, we had our record low for this day, which was -34. 8:29, that's when the sun rose this morning, sunset this evening at 4:43 p.m. We're seeing those days get longer already, 8 hours and 14 minutes. It's actually 5 minutes more daylight now than when I left before Christmas break back on the 15th of December. So it's happening. Summer's coming. It'll be here before we know it. Okay, we are looking at 30% chance of showers in both Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow. 9 degrees for a high in Victoria. Temperature sitting steady at 7 degrees in Vancouver. Cloudy conditions with 15K winds in both Edmonton and Calgary tomorrow. -6 for a high in Edmonton, -4 in Calgary. Calgary also seeing some fog patches dissipating by the morning. Now in the prairies, we are seeing mainly sunny conditions. However, the wind chill factor is what's going to be really pushing those minuses down into what's feeling like the mid-20s in the morning and the mid-teens in the afternoon with the wind chill factor. But the actual temperature, -8 tomorrow in Saskatoon, -10 in Regina, -11 in Winnipeg, with basically a 15K wind, but still with that wind chill factor. Now in the central part of the country, this is the only area we're basically seeing snow across the country tomorrow, except Toronto. Toronto mainly cloudy skies, high of 2 degrees, a high of 1 in both Ottawa and Montreal. Ottawa looking at 70% chance of flurries tomorrow and a 30% chance of snow expected tomorrow in Montreal. Mainly cloudy conditions expected tomorrow in Fredericton, high of 0, a high of 2 expected in Halifax with a mix of sun and cloud, also expected in Charlottetown, but we're going to drop that 2 down to a minus there for a high of -2. 15K winds in all of those cities as well. Temperature sitting steady near 0 in St. John's with mix of sun and cloud and a 20 to 40K wind there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Air Canada had the worst on-time performance among major North American airlines last year. That's according to aviation data firm Cirium. The report says only 63% of its flights landed on time, which means around 140,000 planes did not arrive as scheduled. WestJet placed 7th in North America with 69% of its flights arriving on time. Delta Airlines, meanwhile, in the United States, was in the top spot at 85%. Hydro One's Chief Financial and Regulatory Officer Chris Lopez will be stepping down on June the 30th. Ontario's largest electricity transmission and distribution provider says Lopez plans to pursue other opportunities. The company says Lopez will remain in his current position while the search for his replacement begins. Lopez joined Hydro One back in 2016 as Senior VP of Finance after holding several positions at TransAlta. A famous character has entered public domain in the United States. Steamboat Willie lost the copyright protection on January 1st for the classic Mickey Mouse character from 1928. Within hours, creators were having fun remixing Steamboat Willie's whistle into dubstep, turning him into a video game character, even having him shoot people and crash the Titanic. As one of the most recognizable characters in the world, Mickey Mouse has been protected by Disney for decades. The copyright protection on Walt Disney's 1928 animated short Steamboat Willie was supposed to expire back in 1984, but the company lobbied to have U.S. copyright laws changed over to cover the life of the author plus 50 years. It protected Willie until 2003. The copyright was extended again until the end of 2023. Now, anyone in the United States can make use of the 1928 short to create news stories and artwork depicting Steamboat Willie. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 86 points on the day to finish at 20,872. The Dow was up 25 points to 37,715. The S&P 500 was down 27 on the day to 4742, and the Nasdaq was down 245 points to 14,765. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.27 to $70.38 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 5 cents to $2.57 US. Gold was down $4.02 on the day to $2,058.96 US an ounce, and silver was down 13 cents to $23.66 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.14 per bushel, barley's at $6.85, canola's at $14.58, and corn is at $7.87 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was up $3.43 to $171.93. Feeder cattle were up $3.13 to $225.43, and lean hogs February contract was down $2.65 to $65.33. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 75.05 US. Recapping one of our top stories, there are reports that around 200 Christians were massacred at various villages in Nigeria. Amnesty International says on Friday that 194 people were slaughtered on Christmas Eve in Nigeria's Plateau state. The agency is calling on the country's president to do more than merely condemn the horrific attacks. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack, but local aid officials believe it's the work once again of some of the Fulani herdsmen. A former TV newscast director in British Columbia says she was fired from her job because she didn't agree with the way her station was allegedly pushing the COVID-19 pandemic narrative. Catch the informative interview with Anita Krishna and BCN's Naveen Day shortly. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Many Canadians put their trust in the media to get fair, balanced, and factual news. But a growing number of Canadians are discovering their trust in the mainstream media is wavering. Joining me today is Anita Krishna. She has 20 years experience working with City TV, CTV, and Global. She says she was terminated from her newscast director position at Global Vancouver when she began questioning the COVID-19 narrative that was being spread. She joins me now from Vancouver. Anita, welcome to Bridge City News.
Hi, Naveen. How are you?
Great to have you on today. So first question, Anita, you say that in 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic really started to take off and change our lives, there was an untruthful narrative in the media. So before we get into the specifics of your time at Global, can you just tell us what you were observing? Did you feel that mainstream media news was slanted in a certain way, or was there bias?
Well, I would say that when COVID first hit, I wouldn't say that I realized that we were being untruthful then per se. It just felt like everything was coming so fast and furious, right? Why were we saying, okay, self-isolate, lock down, don't travel, extend spring break, keep your kids at home, kids are getting this. We were starting to say flatten the curve, social distance. We were starting to say all those things without evolving into that. Those kinds of things take time to evolve. All catchphrases and things like that don't come out of the gate day one. Why did it come out of the gate day one? That's what made me question it. Wow, it's almost like, I'm not saying this is what happened, but it's almost like the script was written. Was the script already written? And news doesn't go like that. News evolves, and over time, so that's what it felt like to me. It was like, boy, oh boy, every big institution, airline, like I've talked about before, sports teams, schools, public gatherings, bang, 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 all made measures out the gate. And that felt unnatural to me.
Now, in a video that is posted on your website, anitakrishna.com, from February of 2022, you spoke at a rally in Vancouver. You said, quote, "I think the most misinformation that has ever been spread in the past 2 years has come from mainstream media," end quote. But then you said that your heart was broken. Tell us, what was brewing in your conscience, and what was your reaction to the news being covered in the way that it was?
Well, all the misinformation. I mean, how dare anybody accuse us of spreading, or people who are just trying to find another side, of spreading misinformation, when it was the mainstream news that avoided talking about medications. If you really care about our health, you would say, hey, there are some medications that have been studied and they are viable treatments. You don't then care about my health if you're hiding that from me. Also, if doctors are being banned and their licenses are being suspended, which we all well know that has happened to doctors who tried to prescribe these medications, which I won't name, why did the news not report that? Why did the news keep you shut in your house without getting vitamin D and exercise? That's what keeps you healthy. You know what else keeps you healthy? Going to your AA meetings so you don't relapse. Going to church so you have spiritual gatherings. Masking. 3 years in, you expect me to wear a mask on my face? You got to be out of your mind. So all these measures were driving misinformation, clear as day. You didn't fix the problem. You're getting people to have 2-3 jabs and they're still wearing a mask. Do you think we're a bunch of fools? You want to make fools out of us. So you are the spreaders of misinformation, trying to oppress real information. That is my opinion. That's what I saw that went on. The reason that I was heartbroken over that is because I worked with people for 20 years who I considered friends and family. And all around me in my life, I'm hearing people ending up in wheelchairs post this certain treatment. My own family was affected. People have died in my family from this. People have been paralyzed. I can tell you story after story of people who are injured from one of these things, and they are mandated to then take the second one, even though they nearly died from the first one. And then they're fired from their jobs because they didn't take the second one. So where is the humanity? Where is the heart? And how can people I work with advocate for this and think that this is okay to throw healthcare workers out on their behinds with no pay? That's why I was heartbroken, that everybody lost their morals.
And you said that alarms were going off for you because all this news was coming out very quickly and it wasn't really developing, and it was just coming too fast. And you said that you didn't speak up for much of 2020 because you knew that if you did, you would get into trouble. So what caused you to eventually speak up?
Well, you did get into trouble. You kind of knew how everybody felt. You could feel it all around you. It was every human being can feel how it has become. So you kind of just, you're just looking and trying to say little things in dribs and drabs to your friends quietly to gauge how people are feeling. Some people are with you, some people are not with you. But I just couldn't take it anymore. Like towards the end of 2020, I just couldn't take coming for children, and I couldn't take coming for pregnant women. Those were the two things. And also, you have to be devoid of any heart whatsoever if you think it's okay to treat elderly people the way we did. They were the first people that we isolated, and we were saying the elderly they need to isolate the most. Well, that's extremely damaging. So every vulnerable group, elderly, children, pregnant, it's like we were coming for them. And so to me, this was not like a little vanilla thing. Oh, ha ha, we did something sneaky and bad. This was like really, the harms to me were outrageous. And that's why I started speaking up and going to rallies and getting in trouble, that type of thing.
And many of us have heard about those who have recovered from symptoms by taking medications that weren't officially sanctioned by health authorities, and and some of them are people that are known to us. So wouldn't that be something that would be newsworthy and worth investigating into?
Absolutely, of course it is. It's if you don't tell the public, there are certain doctors prescribing medication and healing people, and they're getting their license suspended. That's why your average neighbor and man on the street doesn't know. That's the job of the news, to inform them of all the other things that are going on. And to have like a total media blackout on information that the public needs to know, it's terrible.
Now, when you did speak up, how did your leaders and coworkers respond to your concerns and the news story ideas about people recovering or the possibility or increased numbers of miscarriages that you were talking about?
Oh, they just completely dismissed me. They just thought that there was only one answer. I was completely disregarded, bullied, and suspended. No, I was not given any. They'd treat you like a crazy person. And to shut up, immediately shut up, or they just wave you with dismissal, or they go like that, or I would get emails from my boss saying I needed to stop talking about COVID. Well, that's the whole business. That was the whole name of the game for 2.5 years. They're the ones talking about COVID. That's the driving the whole newscast. So don't tell me to stop talking about that. And that's what they did.
And then you were eventually ousted from your position as a control room director. What was the official reason behind your termination?
It's such a namby-pamby reason. It's just like, well, they said to me, they didn't like, I wasn't wearing the mask properly. That was one of the things. And then it's just unsatisfactory behavior in the workplace. Oh yeah, the breach of mask wearing rules. Because it was like dangling and I was drinking water in a room that, like, how am I supposed to drink the water? And somebody walked by and snitched on me. So now we have snitches. I've told this story before, but the room that I was in was a room, one other guy 10 feet away, and a wall of plexiglass. I'm not talking a little screen of plexiglass. I'm talking a wall. If my mask is on my chin, that's why they threw me out that day for that. So it's important people know like what a bunch of bullies they were. They also they said that I violated journalistic practices and principles, but they never told me how. And they also said that, they didn't like me going to the rally. Just an investigation was held to your involvement at a rally. But then what's the problem? Like all these three things that they threw me out the door for, these are unfounded rubbish things in my opinion.
Well, how dare you remove your mask to drink some water? Like, come on.
I know. We should have cut a hole and used a straw. I think that's what they wanted me to do. But.
No, Anita, I was one of the few people from Bridge City News selected to travel to Ottawa to cover the Freedom Convoy in early 2022. And the first thing I witnessed was this Canadian love being spread. I saw people dancing, hugging, they were handing out hot chocolate and warm clothes and food. And what I saw in Ottawa was really the opposite to what I had seen on the mainstream media before I went out there. So when I went out there, the only instructions that we were given were just to walk around and report on what we saw, like be journalists. But it seems as if the MSN journalists were in larger markets were given directives because it looked like they were either looking for negatives or trying to skew the events that took place in a seemingly misleading way. Can you touch on this? Is this something that usually happens?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, anybody that went to the convoy saw what you just described: love, unity, happiness, hope, family, right? What we saw on the news was, oh, the truckers have desecrated the Terry Fox Memorial. Oh, these, wild insurgents are it's an illegal blockade. Every description, every visual. I know for a fact, like on Global National, their editors, shot by shot, sometimes a producer will shot list shots they want them to use in the story. They particularly do that on that show. Other shows, they let the editor just kind of pick the shots. But it was just like every shot, you're going to show people looking like rough, violent bullies or something. It was all deliberate. Why it was deliberate, that part, I cannot explain, right? Because I'm not privy to what the editorial diktats are. And I never was aware of anything like that before. But there was certainly a narrative to make these guys look like litter, that they peed on things, that they were throwing litter, that they were ne'er-do-wells, when that's not what it was. And it was such a stretch, like, oh, there's one Confederate flag. Oh, please, as if, please, and completely disregarding the sea of people that were out there protesting against these mandates. Never in my entire life have I seen a protest covered this way by news ever. And it was to shape bias. It was actually one of the most disappointing things I've ever seen.
I'm glad you mentioned the Confederate flag and the Terry Fox Memorial, because when in my 2.5 weeks there, like, no one had ever seen a Confederate flag, and then a lot of our energy was spent debunking what the mainstream media was reporting. And so I made sure to get B-roll of the Terry Fox Memorial, which was surrounded by flowers. But another thing I noticed during the Freedom Convoy and other events across Canada was the outspoken distrust of the mainstream media. And for the first time for me, it felt like the independent news outlets and citizen journalists were the trusted purveyors of information during that time. Is this something new, or do you feel that there's a shift in public opinion on mainstream media versus citizen journalism?
Yeah, well, I would say if you talk to someone in the supermarket, you talk to your neighbors, you talk to your friends, the trust is waning very quickly for mainstream media if it hasn't just completely been destroyed already. Not everyone is clued in on that. But now more and more and more, I just think, they were losing ground well before all this, because so many people were cutting cable because of the internet and stuff. So a lot of people, but I mean, things are more app. You can just get an app, and they're app-based now. But trust is gone. And I think people are starting to accept this citizen journalist. I mean, a lot of people, my brain doesn't work like this, but a lot of people stand there with their iPhone and go live. My brain works in like television setup. So I probably need to be doing more live. I have to get with the new school instead of like the old school. But people are watching citizen journalism. They're watching, even if it's not polished, fancy, edited with all the whiz bang of a news show, people are watching it because they want that truth. So you're right. People are losing trust very rapidly.
Now, circling back to the National Citizens Inquiry, what kind of reaction did you receive from the public? Was it positive, negative?
It was, I would say, 95% positive. There was really, I don't get any comments when I read the comments, because I do go and try to read all the comments. I don't receive any comments of, to me, it's 95% positive. Sometimes you get people saying, oh, why didn't you speak up before? You should have said something before. Well, when I saw something, I said something. Like, I did it in the time that I did it. If that's unsatisfactory to you, I don't really care. You're not walking in my shoes. And sometimes I've read a comment where somebody said, oh, she should be hung. Also, like stuff like that, where you're like, whoa, okay, all right, okay. I can't deal with the crazy, you crazy, right? So for every one or two negative comments, it's 95% positive. So that tells me something.
And what do you feel Canadians can learn from the testimonies that were heard at the NCI?
First of all, I wish more Canadians would watch all the testimony. What Canadians have been through is staggering. Some people have lost everything. Children, businesses, families, mothers. And they were brutalized. Some people weren't allowed to say goodbye to their loved ones. in the hospital. Like, I would encourage everybody to watch and see the testimony of normal Canadians, and also see the experts that were brought on, like Catherine Austin Fitz, Edward Dowd, Dr. Hoff, Dr. Malthouse, Nagase, all of them, Stephen Pellick, all these, if you know nothing, you need to now start watching some of that testimony and learn what's been happening in Canada.
And those names you've mentioned, we've had many of those names on our show before, and they've got us strikes on some streaming platforms, and so it's not a secret that the media is also being censored too. But we're just about out of time. I wanted to do one quick thing for you. You also have a podcast. So in our last few moments, just tell us a little bit about it and where our viewers can go to check it out.
I will say this, I was looking for answers so hard. Like, I'm not a journalist, but I am now. I know how to do it, right? But I started to do a podcast just to find out information, and I named it a really weird name because I wouldn't get in trouble. That didn't work out. But anyway, on Rumble, you can find me on AK Straight Speaks. If you type that in, you'll find me. On YouTube, it's Anita K. And then I do have a website, anitakrishna.com, and I write some Substack articles and stuff as well. So I'm doing a lot of different things. So I hope that people will come and check me out and see what I'm doing. I'm not as fast. I can't do something every day because I have a family and other work I have to do, but I do my best. Yeah.
Anita Krishna is a former newscast director, now mainstream media whistleblower and podcaster. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Plans for the twinning of Highway 3 in southern Alberta have been talked about for almost 50 years, and now it looks like the ball will finally get rolling. Joining us to discuss this is Bill Chapman. He is a Coaldale Town Councillor and also the president of the Highway 3 Twinning Development Association. What better person to have on than Bill? Welcome to Bridge City News, Bill. Great to have you on today.
Well, thank you for inviting me to join you for this meeting today.
Of course, absolutely. So, Bill, first, for anyone not familiar with the Highway 3 Twinning project, can you maybe give us a brief history of this 50-year discussion and what the goals of this project are?
Well, sure, Jeanette, and maybe we can go back even to the turn of the century. Corridor began in the early 1900s and was called the Red Trail. And from 1932, it became a numbered highway following the CP rail. And of course, the Highway 3 was branded as the southern branch of the Trans-Canada Highway. So I do remember as a child in the 1960s, taking over 18 hours just to travel from Calgary to Vancouver, through the Crow's Nest Pass to Vancouver, as really this was the key route for Trans-Canada travel. It was certainly a most painful trip, and of course then you had to take the same route back home again.
Right, of course, and of course for people who don't know, it runs from east to west, west to east, right? From Medicine Hat right through to the Crow's Nest into British Columbia, so Saskatchewan to BC, right? And of course, it's dubbed the Crow's Nest Highway, right?
That is correct, yes. And actually, in 1988, this highway became part of the National Highway System. So that's really important for listeners and viewers to note that this highway is actually part of the National Highway System of Canada.
Very interesting. So maybe tell us about phase one. This is from Taber to Burdett, Alberta. So you believe that there are maybe economic, recreational, and tourism benefits, as well as safety benefits, of course. So can you explain maybe what the benefits of the economy would be?
Yes, and as a growing province, we do know that every one of our communities is growing. So the impact of having this highway certainly will be the centerpiece to all of the economic activities that will occur and all the economic growth that is going to take place over the next 10 years. And of course, with the agri-food corridor growing, we're going to see a number of mega projects coming up over the next number of years that really will impact all sorts of service levels in Alberta. And of course, Highway 3 will become the cornerstone to all of these needs in southern Alberta.
That's so interesting. I believe the highway will be rerouted around the various towns along the route, right? So, which, it speeds things up for drivers, which is great, but are you getting any pushback from businesses on who might, businesses that might possibly miss out on potential drive-through business?
I don't think so. I would like to speak for the town of Coaldale, and of course, back in the 50s, the Ministry of Transportation talked about routing highways or major highways around municipalities, mainly for economic and safety reasons, safety and efficiency reasons.
Yeah, 100%.
So that was important to note because Coaldale went through those conversations back in the 50s and again in the 1970s when they actually went to work to twin the highway around Coaldale. And if you remember, the old Highway 3 did go right through downtown Coaldale. And so if you were going to look at today's traffic, not only in numbers, but also in regards to the type of traffic that's occurring on Highway 3, downtown Coaldale would not be able to accommodate the amount and the size of traffic that's going through our community today. So if you look at history and then go to what we've encountered today, that the town of Coaldale has already been bypassed once. That being said, our community has grown 4 times that number since the 1970s. We're a community of over 9,000 population today. So if we translate that theory to other municipalities across our corridor, I don't doubt that there'll be any concerns about bypassing. I know that chambers of commerce are on side with Highway 3 twinning. They believe that this will be a major source of economic boost to the community in terms of not only travelers, but also economic benefit to the communities. And we know that people still need to come to town for groceries, for parts, for gas, for sports, for school, for church.
Yeah, you name it.
It will. People will still come to town.
Yeah. When I think of the Highway 3 twinning project, of course, the main thing that comes to mind is safety. So, I mean, this could potentially cut down on a lot of accidents and fatalities that we hear about quite a bit. So, what do the statistics tell us about improving the safety with the twinning of Highway 3?
That's a really good question, and we know that to bring out statistics on fatalities or collisions, all those sorts of things, my opinion is that one fatality is one statistic too many.
100%.
We need to identify the fact that twinning Highway 3 will be important to everyone for not only for safety, but for comfort. We know that the mix of big trucks and automobiles does not work anymore. And of course, people need to be able to travel in comfort and not be feared about having to travel from Lethbridge to Medicine Hat or Medicine Hat to the Crow's Nest or wherever, so it's important that we have this down and downright.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's a nice big twinned area all through Lethbridge, but as soon as you get outside of those city limits, that's where you start getting into that two-way traffic, and it can get very, very scary in some of those areas, especially once you start getting into the pass and the mountains there. So this is very welcome for sure. What do you see, Bill, as the potential recreational and tourism benefits for this?
Well, the number one reason why people travel anywhere is for an experience. They want to experience what we have to offer here in southern Alberta. And of course, some people like to go to Waterton to experience the mountains, the hiking. So lots of people want to experience our trails. Lots of people want to experience our water reservoirs along here. So people will look on a map, and TripAdvisor happens to be the #1 source for people's not only destination but their experience. And with those experiences, they look for the best routed highways that are the safest, that are identified on a map as a major route, so major highway. So this all works together, and it'll be fantastic to see the spin-offs from recreation, from tourism, from all those things that matter down here in the south.
Yeah. Now, speaking of tourism, of course, one of the main draws along that corridor is the Frank Slide Historical Site. But my understanding is that there's been some controversy over this project happening there because people are kind of worried about the potential impact that it could have on that historical site. And then, of course, the entire town is buried there along with the bodies of those that were killed in that tragic rock slide way back 100-some years ago. So there are some worries to that small community in that area, so that also that they could be cut off from drive-by potential business and tourism. So any thoughts on that?
Sure, we understand, and we appreciate, and we certainly respect the overall sensitivity and historical impact that this slide particularly has had on the overall community. And of course, now that there's a historical destination to it, and of course all the other historical destinations, including the mines. You can name a number of tourism destination components to that people are really appreciating today, with regards to not only just the Frank Slide itself, but also the other activities that take place there. And of course, people go there as part of cottage country now, and of course people go skiing, people go for watercraft. People just want to enjoy a different element of our Canadian geography. So Highway 3 leads everyone through the Crow's Nest Pass, and of course we understand too that the need for rerouting some of the big heavy traffic off of the downtown is really important, and Alberta Transportation has identified that very, very clearly, and have offered a number of alignment options for consideration. And of course, the one dilemma that we do have is the fact that the CP Rail already has precedence over their route through the Crow's Nest Pass, and so that kind of confines our options in terms of alignment.
Okay, Bill, do we know when Phase 1 will be completed, and what are the estimated costs for that?
From what we understand is it'll take about 3 years to completion. So if we start in 2024, we can expect possibly that section or that phase of Highway 3 to be open and ready in the next 3 years. That the cost from Tabor to Burdett is predicted to cost $180 million.
Wow. Okay, interesting. What kind of feedback are you getting on the twinning project from stakeholders like truckers and the ag sector, et cetera? We talked about businesses a little bit there.
Well, as we know, all our chambers of commerce all along Highway 3 are now reciprocal members of our association, and they are in full support of this project. That means a lot, not only to our chambers, but to all the stakeholders along Highway 3. And of course, we have a number of stakeholders who sit on our board as well, and have been advocating very strongly about their need to move goods and services along Highway 3. So we have a number of transport companies. We have some building companies on our board. We have the sugar beet growers. We have the potato growers of Alberta on our board. So we have a number of stakeholders who are very excited about the prospects of twinning Highway 3.
Okay, well, we're almost out of time here, but really quickly, so we know phase 1 is beginning in 2024. It'll take 3 years. How many phases are there in total, and how long will the whole project take? And when will the next phase begin, phase 2?
Yes, so there's a total of 8 phases, and so the government is proudly proclaiming a 10-year window for completing these phases. Some of that will be doable, and of course we know that some of the engineering can take place simultaneously. So some of these phases can go in sequence, or not just in A, B, C, D, and E order. We can certainly see some engineering, some stuff happening simultaneously.
Okay, well, good to know. So we'll look forward to a lot of construction in the future, basically.
Yes, and of course, the way we understand it too is that that there won't be any closures to trans-province traffic.
And then, Bill, just before we go here, are there any final thoughts on this the Highway 3 twinning project?
Absolutely, we want to ensure that that our association is still on board with ensuring that several components to the project be done and done right. Number 1 would being, of course, rest stops. Number 2 being animal crossings. And number 3 is really what we want to ensure is that there are an adequate number of entrances into our communities where the highway might be bypassed. So those are serious considerations and concerns from the municipalities that have been concerned about bypassing the community. So that is the one thing. The number 2 thing that we want to ensure is for federal support, and that is that this highway is really part of the Canadian National Highway System. So we want to ensure that the federal government understands and knows that they as partners become a component of this twinning system. So Destination Canada has already identified Highway 3 in their tourism. In their national tourism strategy, and so we're pleased with that. But again, it's those components that really make this project worthwhile.
And it looks like we're out of time, but Bill, thanks so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Bill Chapman is the president of the Highway 3 Twinning Development Association. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.